After e4, c6, knight c3, d5, knight f3, pawn takes and knight takes back, we're looking at the move knight f6, which is the main move here, and now we take. In this video, we're going to explore more stuff about g takes in f6. It's important to know what to do against this opening, because it's against this defense, because it's actually tricky. What's tricky is that our opponent has a file open on the g. The g file is open. The two bishops are on. They're developable. The game is open, so it could get really wild. Although it's not supposed to be very good, so let's look at this. After d4, we're going to go through bishop g4, which we already went through in one of the previous videos. We now have to play bishop e2. The main topic of this video is not going to be bishop g4. It's going to be all the things that black can choose to do alternative, like bishop f5, queen c7, or rook g8 instantly. We're going to look at all of them and see how, more or less, to take things on. First of all, though, let's have a look at this line, because we need to make a line that I didn't do in the previous video, where I covered bishop g4 straight away, bishop e2, and now the move I didn't cover, and I'm going to cover now very quickly, is e5. It's pretty wild and it's pretty aggressive. Our opponent basically has the intention of swapping queen. So if we take queen takes back, bishop takes back, and after a bunch of swaps, our opponent takes back the pawn in e5. And it's a very boring game at that point, because everything has been traded. But we're meant to finish the game with the bishop pair. So anyway, the best move is the castle. We're going to punish this real hard. Now, we're going to look at bishop takes f3. The threat here is to simply take this pawn and win the pawn for free. Our opponent will not have any compensation whatsoever, because after queen takes queen in d1, we can take back with the rook. Let's mention this line, though, that I've encountered a lot. And this is very good at explaining how we have a massive lead in development. After e4, simply play knight d2. Now you got an attack on e4. You're winning material. Obviously, retreating the bishop just doesn't make sense. Our opponent has been wasting so many tempos, if you think about it. If that happens, after rook e1, position is evaluated almost +4, which is pretty incredible. But remember one thing. In this type of game, our opponent is trying to develop things as quick as possible. If he keeps moving the bishop around, he's leaving out development, and that's particularly wrong to do in this specific case, because this king cannot castle anywhere safely. So anywhere safely. It's not like the king can say, like, you know, I'm only one move away from castling. No, so that's definitely a terrible choice. So after knight to d2, attacking this pawn, f5 will be bad, because you can take the bishop, and then this pawn becomes free and completely winning. So after bishop takes, queen takes back, now we're going to win this pawn. Defending with f5 gives white a much better position with after pawn to c3, creating this pawn chain so that we don't lose that pawn. We're ready to play f3, and we're smashing everything. The center is going to belong to us completely. This is inevitable, and the opponent will have nowhere safe to castle. Position evaluated as if white was almost up a piece. Instead of f4, what if queen takes d4? This loses immediately. This is much worse. Knight to e4 comes now, and now that's it. Position evaluated +6. Guess why? Our opponent can't just move the king away from the threat of discover check. We got this knight f6, tremendous discover check. He can't just move on the d file anywhere, because rook d1 pins the queen. So that's it. There's literally nothing else to do. You might argue, okay, bishop e7, and then after knight f6, the queen can take back. Then you play bishop to f4. Knight to d6 is a very strong move. Now you're also threatening rook to d1, which will control the d file even more. Completely winning position. If black castles to get away from trouble, well, that doesn't really save the opponent from trouble at all. Rook to d1 attacks the queen. Queen cannot go to e5 to kind of stay relevant. She will have to go to b6. But either way, bishop h6 comes now. The threat is checkmate to come very soon. And this is now unstoppable due to the very ugly pawn structure of our opponent. King to h8, maybe the black player wants to simply avoid checkmate, obviously. But now you take the rook, bishop takes back, queen to h5. we got all threats of the world. Game over. So let's make a recap, then we keep familiarizing with the patterns. Take, knight f6, take, and now take with the g pawn. d4. And we're quickly just mentioning this bishop g4 again. Bishop e2, this is important, remember, as mentioned in the previous videos, because the knight is no longer protecting this pawn, and obviously black is threatening to take, and then take here. And blacking is safe enough to allow this type of move, so bishop e2 is necessary. And now e5, castle. Now we're safe, now we're threatening to take the pawn. Let's look at this move. Bishop takes. Okay, bishop takes, and we're just okay. Queen takes d4 now, and black has a pawn advantage. But, so basically now you understand the whole point of e5. But black does have a pawn advantage, and the pawn structure is not even that bad, but he gave us the bishop pair. This means that the black player doesn't watch endgame strategies channel, meaning he hasn't been shamed enough into not doing it. He gave us the bishop pair, he's about to get battered. Queen e2 comes now, not trading obviously, threatening to make moves that come with tempo. And we're going to look at two moves here to see how to take the game. Let's say knight to a6, the idea of going maybe to b4 to c5, or knight to d7. This move can also prepare, obviously developing the knight is that to prepare the king for long castling and find some safety. Rook to d1. Attack the queen. Queen to b6. Bishop to g4 comes now, and that's it. You're stopping our opponent from castling. Okay, rook to d8. Trading, and trading will be very helpful for our opponent because black is up a pawn, and after all the trades, if black manages to trade as much as possible, obviously that pawn advantage will become more and more impactful on the game. Bishop e3. Okay, attacking the queen, queen c7. Take. Rook d1. Queen c7. So now, in this position, we're completely winning. Bishop to d7. We have been completely winning already, but this is now how we capitalize. Bishop d7 check. And our opponent will have to give us the queen. For rook and bishop, we're winning the endgame. If not, let's say king e7 allows us discover check, winning more material. So let's say king e7. Okay, then bishop to f5. The idea is to play queen h5 and bishop to a7. Those would be the moves if we were to play again, but we obviously don't. So bishop g7, how to deal with this? Well, we always have rook d7 check. And after all the captures, the problem is queen g4 makes this fork. And now there's no way for black to stop rook d7. How is he going to do that? Unless black plays knight to c5, which gives birth to an extremely complicated line, starting with, oh wait, this is a free knight, so no. So black will have to play, let's say, knight b8, meaning that the position is getting even sillier, just to defend d7, but then again, you do have the infiltration of the bishop in c5, but you also have the possibility to take in a7. Position is completely winning, as you can see. So, but anyway, the most accurate way to continue is bishop takes pawn, right? And after the bishop develops, let's say here, connecting the rook to the open, to the last rank, so the rook can play bishop c5 check. King has to go to the only square, which is e8, and now bishop to d6 is such a devastating move. How gloriously does the bishop pair just annihilate the opponent? So back in this position, after queen e2, this is the variation where the queen takes the free pawn in d4. Queen e2, we went through knight a6 idea. What about knight d7? This seems like it can allow black to castle alongside and maybe start a normal game. Okay, well, still no. Rook d1, queen to b6, bishop to g4. Exactly the same pattern. Double attack on the knight. If this gets defended, okay, like how? What, do you think that our opponent can castle? Well, no, it's too late, because you have the familiar sacrifice. Rook takes, then the rook is pinned by the bishop, and then you're going to add attackers. All you need to do is win a tempo with bishop e3. When the queen moves, then you can play this move. Rook takes, the rook will be pinned. And then rook d1, queen d3, all of these moves will just complete the masterpiece in a very Paul Morphy style. After this move, what if bishop to c5, counter-attacking? Okay, queen to d3, which is pretty incredible. I was surprised when I saw this move because I wouldn't have wanted to put the queen in front of the rook, meaning that now what are we going to do? Are we going to give away the bishop? Well, it's not like we're going to take with the queen. But this is actually how it works. So now, I mean, we are threatening to win a piece for free, and the queen can't just move away to protect it, because then the bishop can take the bishop for free. So after bishop takes e3 first, bishop takes knight. And now, if the king were to move, we will simply take the bishop. We're up a piece. No matter what happens, we're up a piece. So if instead the rook takes, but now we have the infiltration, queen check, king takes, that was like a Zwischenzug. And after recapturing, yes, we have a isolated pawn. Also, our opponent can take it with check, but we're up a rook, and there's nothing here. The queen is completely lonely in this attack. We're just completing the end game with an extra rook, and absolutely nothing for black. So in this position, castling doesn't work. What about rook to d8, preserving the possibility to castle maybe the other side, king side? Okay, bishop e3 again. Queen b2 is not even worth mentioning because rook b1, and then you're infiltrating here and here, double and tripling the attack on d7. This is completely worthless to even look at. So let's not look at this. After this move, what if bishop c5? And now black is one step away from castling. Will he succeed? No, too late. Bishop d7 check. Rook takes. Queen to g4, doubling the attack on the rook. Okay, rook take. And now this is it. It's impossible to stop our threat of queen to d7 or queen to c8. This queen cannot go anywhere here to c7 where she will be protecting all of these quests, because the bishop will be unguarded. So after bishop e3, how do we close this game in style? Queen c8 check, king e7, rook check, only move is the following. But now check, only move is the following. And now check, only move is the mate. Okay, so let's make a recap, and then we can now stop looking at bishop g4 lines and look at all the other variation in a very brief manner, because these are like not popular, they're not good, and also there's another video where I covered all of this, so you should know what to do already, more or less. So G takes d4, and now let's look at a few options. Let's say, for example, how do we take a move like bishop to f5? Okay, g3. This is thematic. We're going to play the bishop in the fianchetto. e6, bishop g2, bishop d6, and now castle. We are completely safe. And why g3? Here's the thing, right? If your opponent plays the bishop g4 variation, let's go back here a few moves, right? We've been looking at bishop g4. Now here you don't want to play g3, obviously, because after take, remember we were dropping this pawn, and it's really ugly. And so we have to play bishop e2. Because we have a bishop e2, we don't want to play the fianchetto, otherwise the light squares around our king will be weak. So in this position, we're looking at bishop f5. Now we play g3. Now you can argue, okay, but the bishop can now go to g4. Well, we have an extra tempo, right? You can play bishop g2, and now the queen just keeps guarding the pawn in d4. So if bishop takes, then bishop takes, and the pawn in d4 is safe. So this is obviously black wastes the tempo, and that allows us to be perfectly fine in both situations, either with fianchetto or not. Anyway, after g3, we're looking at this line, e6, bishop g2, bishop d6, castle. Also, g3 is this fianchetto setup is very good, because we know that black did this variation of g takes in f6 because he has an intention of playing the rook on g8, and now this move here, this g3 move, completely penalizes this rook, making it useless, at least for quite a few moves. Knight to d7, developing. Okay, c4, and white is already much better. What's left to do for black? Let's say black castles, right? Okay, here you punish it with c5. And after the bishop moves, you play b4. And there's no way for black to undermine this pawn chain, because b6, you just leave it, don't do anything. Either way, if black takes back, you can always take back, and those pawns will be always supporting each other, so there's nothing there. The best move here, if b6, you just play bishop to h6. Rook moves, knight h4. We're threatening to triple up the opponent pawn structure and also isolate them. They're terrible. So after bishop to g6, now bishop to c6 has a discover attack on this pawn. Position evaluated as if white was more than up a piece. So in this position, if instead of b6, which weakens the c6 pawn, what if e5? Try to open things up a bit and allow the better development maybe of the bishop, maybe the knight to enter the game. Again, you just play knight h4, threatening to win the bishop. So after the bishop moves, let's say e6, you play this move, queen to h5. The threat is to play bishop to e4, which wins the game on the spot. It's absolutely unstoppable. If white plays f5 to stop that from happening, giving up a pawn potentially, but at least now able to play knight f6, able to infiltrate the knight, the bishop, the knight in f6, the bishop in h4, all the things that can happen. Just taking f5, you're escaping every trouble. Knight f6 attacking the queen, obviously unless black wants to give us the bishop pair, but this is a fantastic position to play. This loses immediately because of queen g5 and then g7, checkmate. Okay, then what if bishop takes? Queen takes, right? And now knight f6 is simply met with pawn takes the pawn, and that's a disaster. Whereas any other move, what else is there to do? I mean, we're going to play bishop e4, that's too strong. What if f6? Allowing rook to f7, protecting the 7th rank, but now d5. The game plays itself. Taking is a suicide, not taking is also a suicide. This will be it. We also have a threat of d6, but we wouldn't... everything wins at this point. Okay, so in this position, by the way, we went through bishop e6 earlier. What if bishop to g6? This looks like it makes much more sense because it prevents queen h5 from happening and that really strong attack on the light squares. Okay, well, now d5 is already possible. We're threatening d6, winning the game. So after pawn takes, take back with the queen. Queen to c7 now, preparing the rook to go on the same file of our queen. This is just better for us because now we're just taking b7, queen takes, bishop takes, rook goes to b8, but now c6. Take it from here. So let's do a recap here. Knight f3 and take, knight f6, take, and now take with g. d4. What happens after queen to c7? These moves are very often interchangeable. Eventually our opponent can just play bishop f5. But this is just like we can have an excuse to look at different scenarios. Bishop to e2 comes now. Let's explore two different plans. If black now plays rook to g8, especially because we have a bishop in e2, so the rook is attacking g2, maybe with the idea of making us play g3, which makes the light square weaker. So we just play knight h4 now. That's the best way. We don't want to move these pawns. We can keep them like this. The knight in h4 cannot be misplaced by the opponent. The idea here is to simply play castle and then queen d3, infiltrating. Let's explore two options. One of them is e6, the other one f5. Let's start with f5. The idea is to play f4. So castle is the best move. f4. Oh, you might argue, okay, what about e5? Well, this is terrible because simply take, and now rook e1. The game plays itself. So our opponent cannot really go for opening the center because our king is safe, but his king is not. So f4, queen to d3, infiltrating. h6, saving the pawn. Queen h7, attacking the rook. Rook g7. Okay, queen e4. And now we go double attack on f4. We're winning this pawn no matter what. e6, okay, well, bishop f4. And that wins the game because bishop d6 isn't really possible. You can take, the pawn is pinned, you can play knight f5. So in this position, after knight h4, let's not look at this f5, f4 plan because it doesn't really help the opponent in any way. e6 makes more sense, or seems to make more sense. So it's a castle, bishop d6, and now g3. Now we have to play this move. This is just too threatening. Okay, knight a6, developing. Rook to e1. bishop d7, and now it looks like our opponent will be able to castle alongside, but no, because of bishop h5. And we're taking that pawn. So let's see if in this variation our opponent does manage to actually castle and say, you know what, take that pawn, I don't care for it. Well, you take it, and now rook g7, it looks like this is actually really good for our opponent, because he's gonna put the two rooks like this and maybe play f5, f4. But now we also win this pawn. Best move, take. There's absolutely nothing. Rook d to g8, knight f5, that's it. There are no threats. So let's look at this sacrifice, but it doesn't work. Bishop takes, just in case you're wondering if our opponent has something, but it doesn't. Take back, rook takes, check, take back, rook takes, and now taking back with the knight will be a mistake, because after the check, you see, you got the check here, check, the queen here wins the rook back, and I mean, you still be just better, of course, but you wouldn't want to play like that. And even if after the check you go here, same thing. So after this check here, you just move king f1. There are no more checks. So in this position, back here, we just played bishop e2. After black played queen c7, we played bishop e2. And we went through the idea of rook g8 and everything. It doesn't work. As you can tell, there's a perfectly safe way to build safety around our own king. Okay, let's look at this. Bishop g4. Not playing any of these ideas, closing the bishop in, but rather developing. Okay, castle, e6. Knight h4 comes. And after take, knight to d7, it looks like maybe this actually looks like a more decent game, because black hasn't lost anything. And we don't have the bishop pair either. This knight seems misplaced. And black is about to castle. Okay, well, c4. We're going to start launching an attack. Castle, long, g3. Now, how do we carry on? Why g3? Because of bishop f4. That's a thematic move here. So if black plays, let's say, knight to b6, we're going to play bishop f4. If black plays e5, to kind of trying to stop all of the bishop f4 idea from happening right at the beginning of the plan, we obviously don't take. You play bishop e3. You don't want to take your opponent. You're just helping him. So if they take, you can take back, and these 2 pawns are doubled up and isolated. Our opponent cannot really take us. And now we're threatening to take. You do have an attack on a7. And now we're threatening to play rook a to d1. And we're going to go for the weaknesses. So let's say, for example, king b8, rook a to d1. The idea is to play something like queen h5, attacking this weak pawn. Our development is complete, so we can go and start targeting the weaknesses. Our opponent can, you know, these pawns are just blockading the queen and the knight, not going anywhere. And so e5 doesn't work because black cannot really get taken. We're not going to take black. That would be silly. So e5 was kind of a hope move for our opponent, hoping that we would play the bad move, but we didn't. So in this position, after knight to b6, bishop to f4 comes. We'll look at 2 ideas, but none of them works. One of them is bishop interposing, bishop d6. This is the stupidest, because take, and now c5. The other idea in this position is to move the queen to d7, but now rook to d1. Okay, let's look at this h5. The idea is playing bishop h6 and remove this unbelievable bishop from f4. Okay, a4, the idea of f5. So let's look at bishop h6 now. Take. a5, knight to a8, only move. The idea is to, you know, potentially reach some squares where the knight might be try to do something or join the game again, but d5 now just wins. This cannot be taken. If he take, it'll just take back. And if take, queen e3, attacking the rook. So when the rook moves away or gets defended or whatever, you're going here. And then the rooks are joining, and that's game over very soon. Okay, let's make one more recap. Usual thing, blah blah blah. Nf6, okay, d4, and now we're looking at the immediate rook to g8, straight away putting pressure on g2. Okay, now we play like this. Since the rook has already decided where to go, it's going on the g file. Okay, then just do this move that prevents the infiltration of the rook. Bishop to g4, attacking the knight. Bishop g2, defend it with the bishop so that the queen keeps an eye on the pawn in d4. 2 moves we're going to look at before we close this. One of them is e6 or e5. If, let's say, e5, let's start with e5, castle. And now e4 doesn't win material or anything because queen e1 pins the pawn. f5 protects that. Knight h4. Queen d4 doesn't win a pawn because h3 attacks the bishop. Bishop moves. And now knight f5 is devastating. It's a fantastic position to play. So in this position, instead of e5, let's look at e6. Okay, castle. Bishop to d6 developing. c4. And now knight to a6 is met with b4. Completely crazy, huh? Obviously, bishop takes would be wrong because rook b1 attacks the bishop. Well, it pins the bishop to this pawn in b7. We would love to go there. So we're going to play a3. If black protects the bishop instead, let's say queen a5, a3 comes anyway. Bishop takes. Our opponent is up material, but now rook a1. And there's just nothing. There's no way to avoid this disaster. So in this position after b4, what if knight takes? Okay, again, rook to b1. Trying to go to the 7th rank. a5 in this case is possible, defending the knight, but now just the attack a3. Knight a6, rook b7, rook b8, trying to get rid of this very strong rook. Queen to b3, supporting it. Queen to c8, putting more attack over the rook. Okay, take, and now queen a4. Attacks a little bit of everything. Queen to c7, defends both this and this, but now bishop to d2. And what we have achieved is the fact that our king will be safe until the end of the game. This king will not be. So because black compromised the rook to the g8 square, basically that told us that our opponent had either the intention of not castling at all or to castle longside. In this case, what we did, we launched a very strong attack on the queen side. And you can see how you smashed everything around here. There's a very open game. You're going to take the game from here.